My name is Jamil Wilson, and I am the 2021 North American Rolex Scholar of the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society. Thus far, I've had a wonderful, exciting, and hectic journey navigating my scholarship year. My goals for the scholarship were to learn more about the intricacies of marine-related research, to become a more proficient diver, and to explore the world while promoting as much awareness about diversity in marine science and conservation as possible. As a relatively new diver, and as the first known African American and queer recipient, I knew the scholarship year was going to challenge and push me. However, I think it's safe to say nothing can quite prepare you for the challenge of trying to do these things during a global pandemic. It's not only been more difficult to travel, but with health concerns on the rise, operation closures, and capacity restrictions, it's been a bit harder to participate in opportunities, activities, and internships. It's definitely been a struggle at times, but even within those uncharted waters, I've still managed to find my way through it all. And as a result, I've been able to learn, see, and do so many different things. I've gone to some incredible places and met even more incredible people along the way. Most importantly, I've grown during each part of my journey, and as I approach the second half of my year, I think it's important to revisit some of the experiences thus far that have contributed to that growth. One of my first scholarship visits took me to the beautiful ocean state itself, Rhode Island. Here, I met up with former scholar and current University of Rhode Island diving safety officer, Anya Hansen, along with her amazing and adorable family. Though we had originally organized my scholarship visit with some specific goals in mind, due to some medical issues that came up, we had to quickly shift plans. At first, I was a bit sad that we had to readjust, but Anya did not hesitate to come up with some brilliant ideas and thoughtful substitutes to make the most of our time together. While there, I got to meet with some awesome diving legends, take a tour of my first research vessel, visit several marine labs and universities, get nitrox and first aid certified, and help supervise students on getting their advanced diver certification. My next destination would take me to the epically beautiful Baja, Mexico, where I was invited by another former scholar, Joshua Stewart. There, I would meet up with a group of people to participate in a project funded by the Walter Munk Foundation, looking at Mobula Devil Ray aggregations. As my very first marine science endeavor, I was more than excited to join in. During my time there, I was able to help capture, tag, measure, and release the various Mobula rays that we found. I also got to work with a drone for the first time. It was insanely cool to see how it was able to take stock from an aerial point of view. We were able to not only use it to help us get an estimate of some of the aggregation sizes, but we were also able to get some great footage of the different mobulas, as well as other amazing animals that I was seeing in the wild for the very first time. It was a great learning experience and an amazing beginning step towards my goal of conducting more marine-related science. However, my adventures in Mexico were far from over. I later would meet up with yet another former scholar who happened to be nearby, Jan Herrera Fuchs, who claimed the mantle of the Rolex Scholar only a few years prior. As the first Mexican scholar, Jan and I had a lot in common, and he was very familiar with some of the local areas. He and his friend Olin helped me reach the ocean city of La Paz and get in contact with other diving entities in the vicinity. One of these diving entities was none other than Luke Inman, who has worked with many scholars in the past and owns his own dive shop known as Cortez Expeditions. While there, I was not only able to explore more of the underwater world of Mexico, but I learned about how to become an O2 technician as well. After some time, I also got to work with an amazing organization known as Pelagios, who was conducting some shark research surveys at the time. Unfortunately though, as COVID concerns grew, so did boat restrictions, and as a result, I was only able to spend one day out in the field to help collect shark data. While I still managed to get under the water here and there, before long my access to most things became quite limited. Yet, despite the setback, I ended up spending time with great friends who conducted some marine science of their very own. Still, with COVID concerns getting worse in the area, I deemed it was time to move on. From there, I set my sights along the coast of California and flew into San Diego. As luck would have it, upon my arrival, I came down with some sort of terrible foot infection that incapacitated me for a week or so. After I healed up though, I was still able to visit the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, Aqualung headquarters, as well as the Scripps Aquarium before I departed for the next part of my journey. Later, I would be headed to the famous Catalina Island, where I joined up with Carl Huggins to learn about hyperbaric medicine and the importance of diver safety. Catalina Island was incredibly beautiful and offered a host of different things to do and see, and Carl was absolutely fantastic at exposing me to each of them. While I was there, he taught me how to operate the chamber, what it felt like to be a patient in the chamber, how patients are sometimes transported, introduced me to the diving there, helped me learn about my camera, and guided me on how to conduct my scholarship year. He was even kind enough to take me to the museum and convinced me to let him win at putt-putt. It was an incredible time, and when it was over, I was more than a little sad to go. However, the worst of my sadness was yet to come. My next adventure would be flying to a distant French Polynesian island known as Moorea to help out with some coral research. It was going to be my first international destination overseas, with a research project marrying my freshwater background with the marine science I had always been keen to explore. However, I was thwarted again by COVID. This time I had actually caught the virus and turned up positive right before my flight. I was devastated, but thankfully I was allowed to reschedule and eventually fly back out there. Though I had lost some time, Dr. Nissa Silbinger, who was the principal investigator, and her student researchers wasted no time filling me in and helping me jump into the project. I was really astonished at how dedicated the people around me were, especially working in one of the most gorgeous places I had ever been in my life. Every morning made me want to lay in a hammock, feel the breeze, or take a hike in the Green Mountains. The same went for underwater. I've never been in anything so clear and pristine. But instead of relax, we worked hard in the lab or in the field every day, and I was so excited to be part of such an interesting project. Our goal was to see how the fresh groundwater was affecting saltwater coral growth, and using this water in a controlled environment to measure photosynthesis rates. It was truly a fascinating study that I learned so much from. Once my time in Moorea was over, I then headed back to California for a quick week where I was invited by Becca Boring to take an underwater photography course with the renowned Backscatter. Though I knew the basics of point and shoot, Becca and the rest of the gang were keen to show me more about how my camera works by introducing me to the magic of macro photography, or in other words, how to take up-close photos. I was also joined by Russell Lahman, who happened to be the new Boston Sea Rovers intern. As we got started, I learned that Russell was a great photographer. I, on the other hand, was absolutely awful. But as I kept trying, I got much better. Despite the constant swell and sometimes difficult visibility, I somehow managed to capture the colorful life under the California waters. We even got to see a crazy aggregation of sea lions and jellies hanging out together. While there, we also got to talk and share our stories with legendary underwater black and white photographer Chuck Davis, who inspired me to try my own hand at more black and white photos. Overall, it was a really great experience, and I was happy to learn more about my camera. Perhaps one of the most special experiences of my year took place in Michigan, where I got to help excavate the recently discovered remains of a Tuskegee Airman plane that once belonged to Frank Mooney. The project was spearheaded by the Michigan Department of Natural Resources archaeologist Wayne Lasardi and was additionally supported by the National Association of Black Scuba Divers, or NABS, and Diving with a Purpose. As part of NABS, I was invited to participate in this excavation of the plane, and knowing how important it was to my goals of promoting diversity in the underwater world, not to mention how important it was in general, culturally and personally, I couldn't help but to accept. Upon arrival, I had the most wonderful experience learning more about the history behind the Tuskegee Airmen, and of course helping to discover and bring up different artifacts. Thanks to the team around me, during my time there I also learned how to use underwater trilateration, navigation, and the importance of community and sacrifice. After my time in Michigan, I headed down to North Carolina where I visited so many wonderful people, including one of my best friends, Kat, who recently started working at DAN, or Divers Alert Network. There, I got to hang out with the staff and learn everything about how diving safety on the more bureaucratic side works. I also got to partake in a cylinder inspection course with Mark Gresham himself. Of course, right after the class, one of the first things I did was dive without a cylinder. After meeting Craig Nelson and his wife, I was also able to experience what diving looked like before cylinders and the age of advanced technology by testing out a few of Craig's Mark V suits. To say it was awesome would be a complete understatement. Unfortunately, there was more awesome things to be had. Thanks to Patty Seary, I was not only able to visit researchers at local universities, but I was able to dive at the North Carolina Aquarium and get my scientific diver through the lovable Janelle Flemings. Not to mention, I was able to do some fun dives along the way. I couldn't have thanked all the people who supported me enough. The next leg of my journey took me to the never-ending dive possibilities of Florida. My first order of business was to partake in a freediving class alongside former scholar Leah Potts, who invited me along for the ride. I admit it was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but somehow I managed to get through it, and was even one of the first in my group to make it down to 100 feet. While in Florida, I also wanted to get even more familiar with my camera and went to Reef Photo and Video to practice some more macro photography. In taking the class, I noticed my shots were getting better and better each time. Lastly, while there, I headed over to SDI-TDI, where I met up with Brian Shreve to work on getting some advanced diver training and cave diving practice. It was extremely difficult, but it was nothing compared to the challenges I would face when I made my way over to the Bahamas. There, I worked with the fabulous and famous Christina Zanato on a side mount course and cave diving. I struggled a lot in handling this new form of diving. It was difficult to remember all of the tasks and steps that went into it. I worked hard to improve, even taking an evening to float around in the pool behind Christina's apartment to practice. Seeing as I've always loved the mysteries of caves and that one of my goals is to be as proficient of a diver as possible, it was important for me to try it. Christina was immensely helpful in helping me get closer to that goal, but I still have a lot of learning to do. One of my last stops before ringing in the new year was in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I got to participate in my first DEMA event as well as my first Nogi banquet. It was great to meet and celebrate all kinds of renowned divers. For my time at DEMA, I later got invited back to the northern parts of California by Laura Bennett and her son Brian, where I practiced crab hunting in my dry suit and learned the cultural and ecological importance of white abalone, not to mention the importance of making a great pie for the holidays. So far on my journey, even though there have been an innumerable amount of unforeseen challenges and hurdles, I've gained so much experience and knowledge. As I pass the midway point of my time as the OWUSS Rolex Scholar, I look forward to putting even more emphasis on my goals. And as the world opens up a bit more, I have already made some international strides in doing so. Pandemic or not, I couldn't be more appreciative for all the support and opportunities I've been given. And to all the people that have helped me along the way, thank you.